And if everyone could please mute themselves. Okay. So this is our monthly webinar. Amanda will not be joining us today, but Mary Kay and I have some information to share with you. So I'm going to go to the next slide. This is our agenda. We're going to start with some fiscal updates from Mary Kay and some information about communication with the division. And then we're going to move on to some information about enrollment, monitoring, assessment training, and then a couple updates regarding distance and teacher competencies. So I am now going to turn it over to Mary Kay. Mary Kay?
Thanks, Christine. Can you hear me?
Can.
Okay, great. This is just a reminder that Gear Funds FERs are due October 31st. Amanda sent an email on September 29th regarding how to submit the Gear Funds. So please refer to that email prior to submitting the FER for the Gears Funds. All fiscal reports have due dates, and those are listed in the current guidelines. And program administrators should make sure they have the current guidelines and adhere to those dates. Regardless of the fiscal report or who does the fiscal report in your agency, this program administrator is responsible. Most recently, you had to submit the quarterly expenditure reports, and all but 3 agencies submitted the reports on time, and we thank you for that. The advisors desk monitor all reports coming in, which means we track whether or not they're on time or they're late. And anything past the due date is late. And program administrators are responsible for that. If you work with agency staff to submit documents, make sure they know the deadline. And for the quarterly expenditure reports, you want to make sure that you review them prior to submission. There were a few errors in function and object codes, and if they had been reviewed by the program administrator, those errors probably would not have happened. Next slide, Christine. Okay, changes. It's very important that you communicate changes with your advisor. Class schedules and site changes need to be communicated. So if you're changing times, if you're changing dates or frequency of classes, let your advisor know. If you are changing a class site or anticipate closing a class site, you will need to discuss that with your advisor prior to closing or changing the site. We'll want to know that you are continuing to provide services in that area. Contact information is critical. You receive emails from your advisors, you receive emails from Amanda. Program administrators are responsible for making sure that program contact information and agency contact information is up to date. It's very frustrating when emails go out and they bounce back, or the receiver indicates that they no longer work for the organization. So please update your advisor as soon as possible. PIT meeting minutes should be sent after the PIT meeting happens. PIT meeting should happen quarterly, which means that you should be submitting your PIT meeting minutes after the quarterly meeting, or at least quarterly. If you do it more, good for you. Program advisors need to review those, so submitting them after the meeting is important. Program administrators are responsible for making sure that the PIT meeting minutes are sent to the advisor in a timely manner. If you are making expenditures that are different from your grant budget, you need to communicate that with your advisor, especially when it comes to equipment. If it was not on your budget, which you had an approved budget to do so, if it wasn't there, then you need to discuss that with your advisor prior to the purchase. Your advisor will want to know what it is you need to purchase, the amount, and why this was not anticipated. The last update is that if you receive a group email from Amanda, please don't respond all. And unless it states otherwise, you should be responding to your advisor, and anyone in your agency should be responding to your advisor, not to Amanda on the email. Why is it important? It's important because when we track reports or documents that are late, they get more points on the monitoring risk rubric. And more points means that your program might be on the list to be monitored prior to before other programs are with less points. So we do appreciate all the agencies keeping us updated and submitting documents by the deadline. And thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mary Kay. Does anybody have any questions for any of the items that Mary Kay just covered? Feel free to type something in the chat or unmute yourself. Okay. If you think of something later, just speak up. So I want to talk a little bit about enrollment. Based on what is in eData as of 10/15, so that was last Friday, the following programs have made progress towards meeting enrollment by having enrollment of 30% or greater. And I did them in reverse alpha order because I thought we always start with the alpha order, so Altoona always gets to be first. So I thought I'd give YWCA a shot at being first. So these listed programs, YWCA, VITA, RAC, Northampton, Literacy Pittsburgh, Keystone Opportunity Center, Goodwill Southern Alleghenies, Distance Learning Project, Chester County Opportunity Industrialization Center, and Altoona Area School District have all met enrollment of 30% or greater for their 064 programs. I did not look at enrollment for 061 because they're kind of a different animal. And I didn't look at 054 because Amanda discussed that on our last webinar, that they had all met the first level of conditions for continued funding. So they're good. I would say that considering we're about a third of the way through the year, I'm a little concerned that so many programs aren't even at 1/3 of enrollment. So I think if you're under 30% enrolled, you should, just start looking at the reasons and see if you have to make any changes now, because you're either not enrolling or you're not entering data. I did, in looking at the performance reports, see several performance reports for agencies who only started entering data in the past 2 weeks. And I'm not sure why that is, because I think you've all been in eData for at least a month and a half now. And then there were 4 programs that were under 10% enrolled. So if that is you, I'm not calling names out or anything, but if that is you, really, start taking a hard look and get in touch with your advisor if you want to talk some things through. I'll do another overview like this, maybe in late December, early January, to see where you're at. And what I would say is those who are still very low at that time should probably expect a call from their advisor. And you can certainly always pick up the phone and call your advisor, anytime in advance if there's an issue or a struggle. So, um, congratulations to the 9 agencies listed. You're doing a great job. Um, so, as some of you know, or maybe all of you know, we have started monitoring programs. Again, we started back up, I guess, at the beginning of the summer. And we talked about it with you a little bit last time on the last webinar, and some more issues have come up. And this is just, kind of growing pains, I think, from switching over to face-to-face monitoring, in-person monitoring to this virtual monitoring. And it seems like submitting documentation is still a struggle. So I'm just going to try to give you a little bit better guidance on what we want and what we expect, just to help you out. So when we're asking for documentation, we're not asking for just an answer sheet where you look at the monitoring questions and you write an answer down and then that's your evidence. Um, that alone is not sufficient as evidence. That may be part of your evidence, but certainly your statement could not be evidence alone. We need more. So let me give a couple of examples. Local match is one I think that people struggle with a lot. Um, so local match is not a spreadsheet. You can provide the spreadsheet to sort of show us the various things in a list and how much they add up to. That's fine. But what we need is the documentation that supports what's in the spreadsheet. So, if you're claiming some kind of software gift, a letter from the company that gave you the gift that said, we gave you this gift, it's worth this much. Or if you're claiming space, and you're saying it's worth $25 a square foot, what is, how did you calculate that? What did you base that on? Do you have a printout from, some, Montgomery County rents or cost this much or something? So, it's that kind of thing. How is it calculated? If you're claiming tutor time, a report from eData saying, here's how many tutor hours we had. So, think about the things that back up the numbers in the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet alone is not the evidence, is not the answer. Another example is fiscal records. Again, not just your narrative answers. We need to see the spreadsheets, maybe some time and effort documentation, actual examples, not blank documents, not a blank document that says, hey, here's how we collect time and effort. You could include a blank one and then include a couple samples of actual usage of it. Another thing we've run up against with documentation and evidence is people saying, oh, well, you've seen that before. You know this. We've talked about this. So that may be true, but multiple division staff are on the monitoring review. So your advisor may have seen your policy, but the advisor that we assigned to look over the documentation may not have. So you need to submit all documentation for your monitoring. Kind of pretend that you're trying to provide evidence to somebody that doesn't know anything about your program. Right? So if that means that you have to provide a policy that you've already submitted, just upload it to the Google Drive, right? Just put it there as, your evidence for that section. Um, it's not up to the advisor to say like, oh, let me go to the access template and pull a report to see if this is, true or not. You pull the report, you submit the report with your documentation. Same with e-grants, right? The advisors doing the monitoring, it's not like a treasure hunt for them to go and find, oh, I'll go look here, I'll go look there. You, as the person who's being monitored, as the agency that's being monitored, should be putting all of the documentation in that Google Drive for us to look at. Um, Many of you are using other data systems for your own internal purposes, and that's completely fine. I get that. But that doesn't constitute evidence for staff and student files or data, right? Data from eData is evidence. Use official intake forms are evidence, not additional data collection that you do. You can present it additionally if it buttresses or supports something you're saying, but that alone can't be your evidence. And then a reminder that in-person visits, we could observe things, right? So now we're not there and we can't observe. So if it's something that you think we need to see, take a photo, attach a photo. That's fine. I like seeing photos of, early childhood education rooms and, children's bookshelves and things. That's cool. Um, and then a final reminder about the narrative responses. Again, they're really helpful because they do give us a context, right? But they have to be accompanied by some kind of documentation. When we're doing these monitoring visits, we're triangulating different sources of evidence. So we'll take information we get in a student focus group and compare that to information we get in a staff focus group, compare that to the admin interview, compare that to the documentation, right? Are they all saying the same thing? Are they all in sync with each other? And that's how we determine. So, just one person telling us something is not going to constitute evidence. Whoever's unmuted, if you could mute yourself, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Moving on to information about the agenda for monitoring. The agenda is due 2 weeks before the visit, not 2 days before the visit. If you have a draft before the 2 weeks, feel free to send it to your advisor. They'll look at it, but the final agenda is due 2 weeks before the review, and that includes the links to the virtual classes. Please do not be chaotic about this. Sending things in bits and pieces. Send one agenda, all the links on it. If you're having trouble organizing your agenda, get in touch with your advisor before the 2-week deadline. Don't wait until that day. Documents, which I forgot to put on here, documents are due the week before. And, we take them on that day that they're due. We take them off the Google Drive and upload them to our internal drive. And that's it. Like, that's the documentation that you've submitted. You can't, again, be adding little bits and pieces here and there unless we're asking for them, because we're going to ask you for additional evidence. But you really need to have everything done a week before. Your documentation has to be done a week before. Again, don't be chaotic about it. Try to be organized. Another issue that's come up is focus group attendance. I think some of the agencies who we monitored really tried to be thorough with the focus groups, which was great. But I felt that you had some poor staff members, because they held multiple roles. They ended up having to attend 2 or 3 focus groups, and I felt really bad for them because some of the questions are the same. So think about which focus group would be more appropriate, and then just have the staff member attend that one. If they're a supervisor or coordinator, then that's what they should attend as their primary, and then they won't also attend the direct service staff group. And your advisor can provide more guidance on this if you're chosen for a monitoring visit. And then finally, in terms of monitoring preparation, fiscal items. So you'll submit documentation to answer the fiscal questions on the monitoring tool, and we'll look at them. And then we're going to have questions for you and your fiscal person during the live fiscal interview, and be prepared to provide documentation to support your answers. So, for example, we may ask for documentation to support something in your FER or quarterly that caught our eye. So we may be in the fiscal interview and say, like, hey, we were looking at your FER. Can you show us the documentation for the equipment you're claiming in the FER? And your fiscal person should have access to be able to pull that information and share that with us. Or career services, we may ask how you calculate it. In fact, I can probably pretty much guarantee I'm going to ask how you calculate it. So there's a little hint for you. So that's it for monitoring preparation for now. I'm going to pause because I'm thinking there might be some questions about this. Feel free to unmute if you have questions, or pop something in the chat.
Christine.
Yes, who's this?
Hi, this is Pat Dunnan.
Hi, Pat.
Hi, I think I heard you correctly that because our comptroller is going to be virtual, So in the morning, you will let us know what stuff you would like for us to have to pull so that I can let her know. And then that way she's not spending the whole afternoon on a Zoom call or not. I'm trying to,
So, we'll try our best, but, an answer to a question during the interview may prompt a need for documentation. So I can't guarantee that we won't ask for documentation actually during the interview.
okay. And we're going to have our bookkeeper here and then myself will be here, but just in case things that she needs to know, I just wanted to make sure I didn't, keep her just hanging in. So that was all.
Okay,
All right. Thank you.
sure.
Hey, Christine, this is Mary Mingle.
Hi, Mary Mingle.
Hello there. How far ahead do we usually know about a monitoring?
6-week notice.
Is a 6
So
weeks. Okay, thank
you'll
you.
get 6 weeks notice. The agenda is due 2 weeks before and the documents are due 1 week before. Any other questions? Mary Kay, do you have anything you want to chime in with? Okay.
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, great. So moving on to changing topics, assessment training. So in Pennsylvania, in order to administer an assessment, you must take the assessment training that's in the PD portal. All of those assessment courses include an observation requirement. Now, during the past year or so, because of the COVID situation, we've allowed people to complete assessment training and be certified to give assessments without the required observation, in recognition of the difficulties involved in switching to partial or fully remote assessment practices. But, now the time is here that the new procedures that you have should be in place, and we have to get back to including observations. So starting in January, all assessment courses will now include a required observation component. We are also going to require some of the people who were trained during this past year and a half to now complete observations. Those courses were named observations delayed for a reason, because they were delayed, not tossed out. So because of the volume, we're only going to require this of people who were newly trained, not people who were refreshing. So if you have staff who refreshed their tape or refreshed their CASAS in the past year and a half, they won't have to go back and do the observations. But if you had hired new staff or had staff newly trained, you'll get a notification from the PDS. We're working on the list right now. And you'll have, I forget, I think it's March 31st was what we decided. Your staff will have until March 31st to get those observations done. And you can get more information from your consultant or from the PDS. We'll get in touch about who needs to do this and who doesn't. And then if you have any questions or you feel like you want to question something, contact your advisor, and say, hey, they told us so-and-so has to do this, and here's why I think they shouldn't, whatever. So it can be a conversation, but we really do want to get these done by March 31st and get everybody fully caught up. Any questions about that?
Christine, this is Lori from Goodwill. If we have somebody that we're training now, can we have them do observations and turn them in?
So I think the answer to that is probably yes, but I don't know the full ins and outs of how the portal is organized. So what I would say is contact your consultant and get the form from them. And if Chelsea's on here, I hope she's not tearing her hair out. So yeah, I think so. Chelsea, I hear you're there, right?
Yes,
Is that
here.
okay? Is that okay if they do that?
We're working on revising those forms.
Okay.
But as soon as we get them done, if you do want to reach out to your consultant, even if you get those observations done and then you aren't able to submit them until we have that observations course open in January, is that okay?
Works for me.
Okay, great.
All right. Good question. Thanks, Lori. Thanks, Chelsea.
This is Veronica.
Hi,
Question
Ronnie.
on, hey, hope everybody's doing well. For the forms that we would be completing for the observations, will they be available on the portal in the repository.
Chelsea, I'm going to defer to you again if you're still there.
I'm
And if
sorry.
you know,
Yeah.
Yep. That's okay. They won't be available until we get the observation courses running in January. But we will have them before that, if that makes sense, Ronnie.
Okay,
so
that was just something I thought I'd get started on. That's okay. That's no problem. And I apologize. I'm having a hard time on my side with the volume. I'm not sure if it's me or not, but thank you.
we can
Appreciate.
hear
I
you.
will to hear that. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Just wanted to give you a quick update that we've added a new resource to the distance resource list in the policy. The reason I'm bringing it up is because Chuck was kind of excited about it because it has an ebook option. I think it's our first one that has an ebook option. So yay, Steck Vaughn, yay, ebooks. So check it out. I don't know if it's, who wants to use it or who submitted for it, but it's there now. And I had the policy posted either yesterday or the day before. So it's in the official policy now. And finally, today, I just wanted to let you know, in case you hadn't noticed, because there's so much going on all the time. We posted a link on the PDE website to the adult education teacher competencies that are linked on the links site. They've been out for several years now, but I don't know. I just got around to doing this, is what I'll say. And that's all I'll say about it. So I just wanted to quickly show them to you. I'm going to put them here. Mary Kay, can you see that I've changed what I'm sharing?
Yes.
Okay. So the competencies are organized by domains, and then there's competencies and performance indicators, very similar to all kinds of competencies from the past. I, so these are updated competencies, but, being a good instructor, there's some things that are timeless about being a good instructor. Maybe the sample illustration may have changed a little bit, or maybe there are additional performance or different performance indicators, but sets learning goals is sets learning goals. I think that's probably hopefully always been part of what being a good instructor includes: setting learning goals, helping your students set learning goals, and completing formative assessments. So you may want to check these out and possibly start if you're not already using them. We're going to provide some support around them starting either in the spring or by next year. We're going to have a module about them, and we'll start sort of labeling our courses to which competency it addresses. So that may help you if you have a teacher who needs to work on a certain competency. You can say like, oh, take this course. There is a self-assessment also on the link site. It seems a little complex to me, but I think that if your teachers want to use this for themselves, I don't know that I would necessarily recommend using this like as a program, but I think your teachers may want to, use this for themselves to see like, hey, this is something I want to work on. The one thing about this is you can't save it. So you have to print it or save it to your desktop. Like you can't go back to it and like fill it out, or change it. It's like a static thing. So I just thought I'd share these with you. The links are in the PowerPoint. If you, feel like using these, I think that we haven't had official competencies posted in a couple years now since I took down the old ones. And, I think that we're probably going to, add something to the guidelines about using them. I think we already added a paragraph, but we may add something more next year. So take a look, see what you think. Feedback. As the PDS coordinator, I would always appreciate your feedback on them. So, any of you, not just the agencies I'm the advisor for. And that is the end of our information for today. I'm going to pause here to see if there are any questions about anything we covered.
Hi, Christine. This is Susan Klauser. How are you?
Hi, Sue Klauser. How are you?
I'm okay. I do not have a question that is related to what you covered, but I'm going to
Okay.
ask anyway. Amanda had mentioned that come fall, we were going to hear about an amendment.
Yes.
Yeah, for, transitioning to 100% computer-based assessment. And has there been any movement on that? Will we be hearing more about it?
Yes. Do I know when exactly? No. Is that still coming? Yes. The advisors worked on some parameters that we shared with Amanda, and my impression was that she was pleased with it. And so I think I'm hopeful, although I don't know if I should be hopeful, but I'm hopeful that that information will be going out soon. Ish. We have a question in the chat. How soon will the recording be available? That's an excellent question. As you all remember, I had a little bit of trouble with the recording last time. Hopefully I have solved that, and the recording will be available, either tomorrow or early next week. Do we have any other questions about the webinar or anything else? Okay. So if we don't have any questions, I'm going to end the webinar. I'm going to stop the recording now. And